Have you ever wondered who actually runs the United States? Is it really the president, as most people believe? Or maybe it's Congress, the people we elect every few years to represent us? Or is the real power hidden, resting quietly in the hands of unelected officials, corporate lobbyists, or even intelligence agencies operating behind the scenes? In this video, we're diving deep into how the US government really works. We'll strip away the slogans, the simplified explanations, and the surface-level civics lessons to show you the actual moving parts of American power. Whether you're a curious student, a concerned voter, or just someone trying to make sense of all the political noise, you'll want to stick around. Let's begin with the foundations, the structure of government, as laid out by the U.S. Constitution. The United States operates under a federal system. This means that power is divided between the national or federal government and the individual state governments. It's a compromise that dates back to the founding of the country, one designed to balance unity with local autonomy. The federal government itself is divided into three distinct branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Each was created to serve a specific role, and more importantly, to keep the others in check. This separation of powers is meant to prevent the rise of tyranny, where too much power becomes concentrated in any one part of the government. The legislative branch is Congress. It's made up of two chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate has 100 members, 2 from each state, while the House is larger, with representation based on population. Their main job is to write and pass laws, but they also control federal spending, approve treaties, and confirm appointments to the judiciary and executive departments. In theory, members of Congress represent the people, but in reality, things are more complicated. The process of crafting legislation is highly influenced by lobbyists, industry groups, campaign donors, and political action committees. Behind every major piece of legislation, there's often a network of consultants, corporate lawyers, and advocacy groups who helped shape its language and direction. Consider this: when a bill is proposed, it rarely becomes law in its original form. Instead, it passes through committees, is rewritten multiple times, and is often amended to include unrelated provisions. Sometimes, these amendments are pushed by lobbyists or interest groups looking to insert favorable language. It's called pork barrel politics, when spending is inserted to benefit specific districts or industries. Next, let's talk about the executive branch, what most people associate with the President of the United States. The President is not only the head of state and head of government, but also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. They have the authority to veto bills, issue executive orders, appoint federal officials, and represent the U.S. in foreign relations. However, the president doesn't work alone. The executive branch also includes the vice president, the cabinet, and dozens of federal departments and agencies, each with their own specialized missions. These include the Department of Defense, the State Department, the Department of Homeland Security, and intelligence agencies like the CIA and NSA. While Congress is supposed to write the laws, the executive branch is responsible for enforcing them. But enforcement often involves interpretation, and that's where executive power can become broad. Presidents have increasingly used executive orders to bypass congressional gridlock. Though legal and constitutional, this practice concentrates more decision-making in the hands of one person. Let's move on to the judicial branch. At the top is the U.S. Supreme Court, which interprets the Constitution and ensures that laws passed by Congress or actions taken by the president don't violate the nation's founding principles. There are 9 justices, and once confirmed by the Senate, they serve for life unless they resign, retire, or are impeached. This branch is arguably the most mysterious and least understood by the public, yet it has enormous influence over everyday life. From rulings on abortion and healthcare to decisions on civil rights and campaign finance, the court's impact is far-reaching. And while justices are expected to be impartial, the process of nominating and confirming them is deeply political. Over the years, Supreme Court nominations have become major political battles, especially when the ideological balance of the court is at stake. Presidents often nominate justices whose legal philosophies align with their own, and the Senate's approval can hinge on partisan control. This means that judicial power, while cloaked in the language of law, is deeply shaped by politics. Now, let's touch on a term that's become increasingly popular in political discourse: the deep state. While it's often used to describe shadowy conspiracies, in reality it refers to the vast network of career government employees, intelligence officials, and military leaders who remain in place regardless of which party is in power. These individuals keep the machinery of government running, managing everything from disaster response and diplomatic negotiations to public health programs and national defense. However, critics argue that they can act independently of or even against the elected leadership. Supporters say they provide essential continuity. The truth lies somewhere in between. The existence of this permanent bureaucracy means that not all decisions are made by elected officials. In some cases, civil servants exercise tremendous influence over how laws are implemented, which programs get prioritized, and how crises are managed. This can be both a strength, ensuring expertise, and a weakness, diminishing accountability. Then there's the influence of money, perhaps the most underappreciated force in American politics. Running for office in the United States is expensive. Campaigns for the presidency, Senate, and even the House can cost millions. This leads politicians to spend a significant portion of their time fundraising rather than governing. Large donors, corporations, and super PACs play an outsized role in shaping the political landscape. While campaign finance laws exist, many are riddled with loopholes. Dark money groups, organizations that don't have to disclose their donors, spend heavily on ads and influence campaigns from the shadows. The result is a feedback loop. Candidates need money to get elected, and once in office, they're incentivized to pass policies that favor their donors. This doesn't mean that every politician is corrupt, but the system encourages a kind of soft influence that can steer public policy away from the public good and toward private interests. So, who's really running the US government? On paper, the answer is clear. It's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But in practice, it's a blend of elected officials, career bureaucrats, corporate influencers, and political strategists. Power is decentralized, overlapping, and often opaque. That's not to say the system doesn't work. It does in many ways. It ensures a level of stability, continuity, and democratic participation that's rare in human history. But it's also messy, slow, and susceptible to manipulation. Understanding its true nature is the first step toward reforming and improving it. So the next time someone tells you that the president has all the power, or that Congress is to blame for everything, or that the courts are untouchable, remember this: American government is not one thing. It's a dynamic ecosystem of competing interests, shifting alliances, and constant negotiation. And that means change is always possible, but only if people understand how the system works and demand better from those who lead it. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't just click away. Share it, talk about it, dig deeper. Because in a democracy, the most powerful office isn't president. It's the informed citizen. Let's take a step back in history. When the Founding Fathers designed the US government, they were reacting to monarchy and centralized authority under British rule. They wanted a system where power was checked and balanced across different bodies. But they also left room for interpretation, and that gray area has evolved into the complex structure we see today. For example, George Washington, the first US president, established many of the norms we now associate with the presidency, like serving only 2 terms and forming a cabinet. These weren't dictated by the Constitution, but became tradition. Over time, these traditions shaped expectations and influenced future governance. Similarly, Congress has grown in scope and influence. In the 19th century, the role of the federal government was limited. Most Americans had little contact with Washington, D.C. But with industrialization, wars, economic crises, and technological advancement, the government's role expanded dramatically. Social Security, Medicare, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Education all emerged in the 20th century. Each of these expansions came with debate. How much should the government intervene in the economy? How much should it regulate business? What rights should it guarantee? And who decides? These questions continue to dominate politics today. Consider the rise of regulatory agencies like the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and Food and Drug Administration, FDA. These bodies wield significant power, crafting rules that impact media, finance, and health. Their leaders are appointed, not elected, and their decisions can shape entire industries. Let's talk about political parties. While not mentioned in the Constitution, they are central to how the government operates. The two-party system, Democrats and Republicans, has dominated for over 150 years. These parties organize Congress, influence judicial appointments, and control the legislative agenda. However, they also contribute to polarization. In recent years, bipartisan cooperation has declined. Filibusters, government shutdowns, and partisan investigations have become common. This gridlock makes it difficult to pass major reforms even when public support is strong. Now let's look at the role of state governments. Under federalism, states have significant autonomy. They manage education systems, public safety, transportation, and healthcare policy. This means that your experience with government can vary drastically depending on where you live. For example, states set their own rules for voting, abortion access, gun laws, and taxation. Some states are laboratories for innovation, experimenting with new policies that can later be adopted nationally. Others resist federal mandates, leading to conflicts that sometimes end up in court. And then there's the media. While not a branch of government, the press plays a crucial role in shaping public perception and holding power to account. Investigative journalism has exposed corruption, influenced elections, and forced resignations. But media itself is subject to influence, from ownership by wealthy corporations to the pressures of the 24-hour news cycle and the rise of misinformation. In the digital age, information travels faster than ever, but so does confusion. Social media platforms can amplify voices, but also spread disinformation. This makes informed citizenship more challenging, but also more necessary. Civic education in the US has declined in recent decades. Many Americans don't know how many branches of government there are, or what the Bill of Rights guarantees. This lack of knowledge creates opportunities for manipulation and division. That's why understanding how the government really works isn't just for political science majors or journalists. It's for everyone, because ultimately the strength of any democracy depends on the engagement of its people. We often talk about voting as the cornerstone of democracy, and it is. But participation doesn't end there. Attending local meetings, contacting representatives, supporting causes, fact-checking information, these actions matter. They help shape the environment in which decisions are made. In the end, the US government is not a machine with a single driver. It's more like a network of highways, each with its own traffic, intersections, and signs. Some roads are congested with money and influence. Others are quiet and overlooked, but they're all connected. And where we go next depends on which roads we choose to travel. So now that you've seen how the US government really works, ask yourself, how can you play a role in it? Because real power doesn't just sit in Washington. It starts with you.